Create customer experiences with the collective power of design, digital, and convergent experiences. Welcome to the world of Tech Mahindra, where there are no distances, only connections. We have surged ahead with the ability to create anything, to creating objects of enduring.
Hello everyone, thank you so much for staying for the last session, roadmap for Unity 2019. Just a reminder, after this session there will be Q&A. After the Q&A, there will be a reception in the expo area, right? So over to you.
Great. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for coming to the last session of Unite India. My name is Andrew Bowell.
Hi, I'm Rus Scammell. I'm the product manager for 2D with Unity.
Yep, and I look after the product in general for Unity. So we're going to kick off. We're going to basically share this talk. Let's get it going. So what does the agenda look like for today? Basically, we're going to cover off two areas. There's a lot of Unity, which is about how do I use Unity in my studio, in my production. And there's a lot of features that are relevant to just kind of all roles in a studio. So we're going to cover those off. And then we're going to tackle basically the different functions. We're going to break out the roadmap by programmers. We're going to break it out by animators, and then by artists and designers. Actually, just a quick show of hands. How many artists and designers are here? Ah, welcome. And how many programmers? Nice, 50-50, I'd say.
Yep,
how
good.
about producers or non-technical? Yeah, as usual, there's only a few, but thank you for being here too. So there's probably going to be something for everybody here. One thing, actually, I'll just go back, actually. What we're going to do is, there's a lot of detail in these slides, and what we'll do is Rus will post a PDF of the slides on his Twitter, @Rus Scammell. We'll put his Twitter handle up at the very end as well, so you don't need to rush to write that down, but you can get a copy of the slides directly from there. So you're welcome to take pictures, but know that the whole set of slides will be up there too. Right, let's get going. So,
Let's do this.
working with Unity. So basically, ultimately, this whole section and what we achieve to do here is really provide you with a really solid foundation, not just to prototype, which Unity, of course, is so well known for, but also to really get into production and how do we scale through your development. So the first thing is, how do we manage releases? The key thing here is that we have two streams. So we have what we call our tech stream, which is the 3 releases a year we do. So that's 2019.1, .2, .3. And what you'll find there are all the new features that we're releasing. Things like preview packages are often shipped in this cycle. And what we do then is at the end of the year, we'll take the last release, and that becomes what we call our long-term supported release. And that's supported for 2 years, and we only do bug fixing on that release. So you can basically work with us on a tech stream, especially if you're prototyping. When you go into production, generally people move to an LTS and stay on that for 2 years. What we'll do is, of course, we will ship an LTS at the end of every year, and we'll provide a very solid upgrade path from LTS to LTS. So it's a really nice way of staying with us. Last thing to note there, I mentioned packages. This is a new way that Unity is deploying itself. 2 things to know. One is that we ship packages in preview mode. This basically means it's unsupported, but we want your feedback. Download them, use them, get in the forums and work with us, tell us what you think, and then it becomes verified. And that means it's basically being QA'd against the whole Unity release and all the other different packages that are verified and all the other functionality. Okay, so let's kick off. The package manager. We have essentially here, this is the way you actually work with packages. So it's undergoing a big refresh at the moment. The initial UI, if any of you have tried it, you'll note it's quite a little hard to navigate. So we're going to do a big pass on that. So you can do things like search for packages by name, by status, and so on. And also then the ability to update packages, because that's a key part of the workflow, right? You want to be able to stay up to date on the latest packages. So 19.1, you're going to see an additional ability to integrate packages into your own studio's workflow. So of course, many of you essentially create small tools and packages for your own productions. And it'd be really nice, wouldn't it, if you could manage those through the package manager as well. So that's something which we're going to be putting in place in 19.1. And then really for the rest of the year, it's going to be broadening the use of the package manager to things like the asset store, so that there's one way to basically work with packages. And essentially, the asset store is essentially run in that system, a very similar system, but they right now they live in sort of separate ecosystems. We want to bring these together, and of course, being able to do things like package dependencies, which is a key part of how they work, right? So, and finally, something very exciting would be, imagine the ability to selectively browse through either the asset store or your own internal studios packages of assets and preview individual assets in your scene. So before you have to commit to a purchase or download, just to be able to say, hey, I'd like to try that tree, or in this case, that vehicle in my scene, just to see how it looks. So the ability to basically reference into packages as well. The launcher. So anybody who's on our recently downloaded Unity has noticed that we've done something. We've added what's called the Unity Hub, which lives in your system tray or your Mac top tray, and we will be saying goodbye finally to the good old launcher, and it's going to move now completely to managing your Unity experience through the hub. And this is a really great thing. So probably many of you have many versions of Unity on your machine. This is the way to manage that. You'll be able to manage your versions, manage your projects. There'll also be a command line interface to this as well. And then what's the roadmap for that? So of course, we're moving through as you'll see later in the talk, a general UI refresh, which is really exciting. But for the hub itself, you'll see the package system, sorry, both the templating system surface in the hub. So templates are going to be a great way just to, both from your studio's perspective, onboard new developers into projects and the way that you work in your studio, but also for Unity to provide, like, hey, how do I do a particular type of 2D genre, or how do I get started with 3D? And this is templates are basically a great way to kind of get everything you need, packages, assets, and do all the presets for a particular type of genre. Editor UX, is this over to you?
Okay. So I'll take it from here. Let's talk about Editor UX. So the mission here is very important to us. It's to increase the usability for users who are working within the editor, right? Which is basically all of us. And we're going to do this by improving core workflows. So if we look here, this includes a consistent and efficient way to find and manage your user preferences and project settings. I mean, I know I've clicked around a lot trying to find the right setting, and now you have all in one place, it's all unified, and you have search to really drill down into that one setting that you want to change. This comes with an API, so if you're developing your own stuff and you want to add to the settings here, you want to add settings that other people can find when they're using your tools, if you're on the asset store, you can do that easily. And in the next releases, we're going to add more to this, especially in terms of services and build configs. 2019.1, we've got a really cool, I mean, I've been waiting for this myself for a while, shortcut manager. Right? So everyone's wanted to get access to the shortcuts, want to create their own. So now you can create shortcuts for any action. This comes with an API, again, like the settings earlier, for Asset Store and tool devs, so you can make your own and save and share these shortcut maps. So if you're working in a team, this is going to enable all of that customization to be shared across your team. Cool. Shipping with 2019.2. This is actually a personal favorite of mine, and I'm sure this will be good for a lot of coders in the audience. Console window improvements. Clickable stack traces that allow you to basically click through to any function in the call stack. I mean, who doesn't want that? And then you can just go through and find that one piece, right? Not just the first one, but you can dig through and find that one console log entry that's causing all the trouble in your game, right? Or in your application. Or if you're using debug log calls that you've kind of wrapped, right? I know a lot of people do that. So you can also filter all of these logs so that you can, again, by search, you can find what you're trying to look for. You can go through keywords, and you don't have to scroll through that really long list of log entries, right? So it makes the log a lot more useful. And the new asset import pipeline. Again, this is, I think, a source of pain that we've been meaning to address for a while. So this is going to launch, and it's going to improve throughout 2019 as a staggered release. We're basically solving this problem, right, where you're waiting overnight for all of your imports to come through, or you want to switch platforms instantly, right? This should be possible. And we are doing it by creating on-demand import as well as parallelizing a lot of these imports. So since we've talked about editor UX, let's talk about editor UI, right, and what's happening there. So we want an editor that is flexible and modern, and we really think it's time to modernize the editor. So the mission here is to do exactly that. And we're going to do this with you, because when we change an editor, we're changing the tool that you're using every day, and we want to make sure that we do it incrementally. So let's talk a little bit about what that plan looks like today. In 19.2, we're going to ship the initial version of the new design, and the focus on the first release is clarity. Right? We want to make it a lot clearer, a lot more. This is an example here of what that will look like. And there's a huge pile of design debt that we've accumulated as we've built the editor, and we are removing this, leaving you with this beautiful, clean experience, right? And on top of that, notable point, we're getting hover states, so you can create a more responsive UI. Okay, accessibility is something that's close to my heart and close to a lot of us as we build these tools, right? And as you build tools for your users. So we wanted to add more features to the editor that do exactly this. So for example, you can change the default editor font size. That's something I've always wanted to do. And next year, we're going to have better keyboard access. This will allow you to control Unity from a keyboard, right, more easily. Cool. So I'm going to pass it back to you, Andrew.
Cool. Thanks, Russ. So actually, I really encourage you guys in the forums. We're posting a lot of previews of our new editor and the UI. I'd really encourage you guys to get in there. We really want feedback on that. There's a really cool forum thread where we're soliciting a lot of your feedback. So Project Tiny, I mean, if anyone was at the keynote opener yesterday, you would have seen this. But basically, most of you are familiar with messenger apps. I think what is about 2.3 billion people use the messaging apps out there. And the problem is that generally the deployment for this is HTML5 and needs to be a really small footprint. So how do we solve that with Unity? Well, this is where Project Tiny comes to the rescue. Mission here is to create a highly optimal, tiny download runtime and workflow. You heard it here first, news. This is available now. We announced this yesterday, so you can visit our website, and you should be able to very quickly find the download for this. What the experience is like, it's available via the package manager. So you'll see, as I indicated earlier, through our package UI, go and look for the Tiny package, and it will basically add this mode to the editor. You'll note that there's sort of two experiences here, and that's because the new runtime utilizes our new entity component system and our new architecture, which is about like stripping out everything that's not really needed for a specific use case. And for the initial release, it's in beta, and until probably mid next year, where these two worlds will converge, it will have a slightly different workflow. But what we're going to do is this project you're seeing here, Tiny Night, ships out of the box with the Tiny mode, so you can go in and see how we put this together, and then of course go to maybe move some of your own projects over. Moving on then to platforms in general. For us, basically, there's a clear mission here. I mean, Unity's this is one of its pillars of success, is that it's platform support, and it's really just the ability to build anywhere with minimal effort. Of course, in the way that we approach this, we have essentially a platform foundation team, which is a base layer of functionality in Unity that handles things like our IL2CPP compiler system, things like our input system. So in sort of 2019 timeframe, a couple of big things there. We recognize that we hit some size issues with Android, And that was actually down to how we were handling 64-bit transition for IL2CPP, so we're addressing that in 2018.3. Our input system finally getting its outing, a new input system in 2019.1, which is really just a much more efficient and natural way to work with inputs. And key thing, we've enabled incremental garbage collection for just a single flag that you can set. That's in our 2019.1 release. And then throughout next year, we're obviously going to be really investing in, like, this whole team is really about iteration time across platforms, just how to make things just that more, increase your developer velocity. Okay, so mobile. I guess everybody here is developing on mobile in some shape or form. So what's happening? Big thing, we're supporting obviously the ARM64 change. We're also backporting that to the 2017.4 release, which is our long-term supported release for 2017, which is really good news. So anybody on that release now will be able to obviously smoothly upgrade. And then for 18.3, supporting Android app bundles, which is a really nice way of efficiently deploying just what you need down to the from the Play Store. Other nice things in there, the Android runtime permission support, so full support for managing all the various permissions. Further on into next year, 2019.1, a couple of key callouts here. One is actually just things like the notch support. Obviously, phones now, you rely on us for really taking care of all the simple things. So just having like parity across all of our mobile versions for things like that. Something that's not mentioned here, but I will mention it, that we're really working on the iteration time for the kind of play on, build and then preview on target. So you'll see the ability, this, is it not? Yeah, it was a brand new piece of functionality that dropped in, which is just, we had this ability to do script-only builds, so it didn't rebuild your asset bundles, and we've basically upgraded that so that it only rebuilds the assemblies that are required. So you can do, once your APK is on target, the time to basically make a change and see it on device is actually super fast now. It's 3 or 4 times the speed. XR. So some of the big things here, we are of course moving, very quickly. This space is moving super fast. And it's really emerging where the use cases are. So some of the things you'll see here, obviously LWRP, which is our new render pipeline, adding full support to that for AR Foundation, bringing ARKit 2.0, AR Core 1.5 support right up, and the core haptics APIs as well. That's a really nice change for working with like the different VR controllers. Then what we're seeing, of course, is for VR, a lot of the use cases are in industrial and sort of some of the non-games use cases. And of course there, it's all about like, you generally get you can afford yourself quite a big PC to run these things loaded up with a big GPU. So getting full support for our new high-def render pipeline for VR was very important. You'll see that land into 19.1. And then for 19.2, adding single pass rendering for DX12 is really a really nice optimization. All right, back to Russ for connected games.
Sweet. So let's talk about connected games. The idea here, wrong way. Let's talk about connected games. So the idea here is the central idea is we want to give you a scalable, real-time multiplayer solution, right? So let's dig into a little bit what that means, right? So one of the hardest challenges in real-time multiplayer is performance and scale, right? And to solve this, we really need a new full stack of solutions ranging from networking code to fully integrated services and samples that tie it all together. So the alpha for this is available right now, right? So if you go to unity3d.com/realtime-multiplayer, you can get hold of that, and then you can experience some of the new transport layer stuff. And we've also released, as we said, samples. So we've released fps.sample, which has within it a one-click client-server deployment, right? Which I think a lot of people are getting really excited about. I definitely recommend you check it out. It also comes with a suite of debugging tools, which showcases how you would do that for your own titles. Let's look at developer services. So we want to help you ship faster, right? And you want to ship faster. So with 2018.3, we've added more, we're going to be adding more integration support, right? So you can connect to Unity services, you connect Unity services to your kind of third-party tools, right? So currently, you've got support for things like email and Slack, Slack, Discord, Jira, and webhooks, right? So you can write your own. But we're also actively adding support for email and Trello. And this includes things like summary roll-ups, so you can get an idea of all the stuff that's changed, right? All the notifications. Yes, collaborate, right? So we're working on new collaborative features as well. So this one includes live commenting within the editor. So this is really cool. So you and your team can sit in your game, in your editor, right? And you're having real-time conversations that are attached to your game objects in your scene or assets in the project, right? And along with this, we're also adding support for branching, right? So this we've heard a lot of requests for this. Our cloud build solution has migrated to Google Cloud Platform, and this comes with all of the expected performance optimizations. And we're also working on improved support for creating and managing multiple build configs. Now, this also includes local builds. For performance reporting, we're going to add support for custom metadata and debug, so that's in 2018.3, debug logs. And also in development here, we're looking to expand support there to WebGL and Linux. So the feature formerly known as bug reporting, which is now called user reports, this is really cool and will help you develop kind of richer logs with more profiling information leading up to events. So this is in beta now. Okay.
Back to me. All
Back
right.
to you, Andrew.
Right, so that was production. So that's all the stuff that you need just to kind of get Unity working in your studio, all the kind of, like, if you like, the ABCs. So we're going to dig into the roadmap for roles, where we get a little more detailed and technical. So
cool.
Hold on to your seats. Right, so what about programmers? I mean, our mission now, and if you joined us yesterday for the opener, you'll see it's all about performance now. I mean, Unity's obviously made great strides with accessibility and ease of use with game objects and so on. And some of that has come at the cost of kind of abstracting a little bit far away from the hardware that's underneath it. So now it's about like how can we really leverage that hardware and obviously keep the accessibility there. So what are we doing? Data-oriented tech stack. So that's the new term we're using for the collection of technologies. That's our job system, our entity component system, and our burst compiler. The Megacity demo, which is showing here, was the sort of first real example of like if you like, the high-level systems running on top of that data-oriented tech stack, and really showed off how to do streaming. So how to like instantiate hundreds of thousands of entities in one frame. An instantiation in ECS is basically the same cost as a mem copy. There's no additional overhead, just to give you kind of a sense. But what's the roadmap for this next year? Basically, what we're going to be doing is working through animation, physics, AI, audio, and moving these systems internally to all run in full ECS mode, so all leveraging our burst compiler, all leveraging the job system. And what we'll do is throughout the year, you'll see us kind of have, like, if you like, some exit ramps that lets you see our progress, lets you see how we're doing. And a really important thing here is this new intermediate rendering for ECS. So we have something here called hybrid mode, and that's actually how this demo was running. So what it's doing is, you can go into Unity as you know it today, set up your world with game objects and components, maybe leverage some aspects of ECS, so maybe you have a crowd system or some fluids, or maybe it's your cheat detection code, but something you need to do really, really high performance. And we basically are able to manage these two worlds, and of course rendering is one of them. All of our HDRP and lightweight all work based on our existing game object architecture. So we need a way to convert between these two worlds, and that's what that does. So moving on, the burst compiler itself, this is actually coming up to a 1.0 release. So it's been in preview for some time. One of the key features of burst is it's fully deterministic. So if you think about that for a sec, it's deterministic not just on one architecture, but across architectures. So if you're running, in lockstep, especially for doing network code that needs to be lockstepped across, all of your clients and server, and you want to do that in a cross-platform way, Burst is actually able to do that for you. So that's a really interesting innovation. Okay. Ooh, did that jump? Oh no, it's okay. Yeah. So what else is going on? You probably saw the 3.4 PhysX upgrade. So that took a little longer for us because we've got so many platforms. There was a lot of work in upgrading PhysX across the whole suite. But there's a lot of nice stability that came with that across the board. That's largely down to PhysX itself. Really nice support also for basically running batched queries like raycasts from C# jobs. So you can really go really wide with the ability to query your scene for AI. The other really nice thing here, we're launching a new memory profiler in preview, and that has a bunch of really nice features, of course, to go in and inspect all of your managed code and really trace down any of those pesky allocations. For UI elements, so Russ mentioned the editor. So like the editor has been largely unchanged for many years in Unity. And about 3 years ago, we went and embarked on a big project to basically rebuild the editor from the ground up. So the old editor the current editor runs in, of course, this immediate mode GUI system, which is great for really quickly speccing out UIs, but it doesn't really adhere to the modern styling systems that people know, like CSS and Flexbox. So we're moving the whole system to a retain mode GUI system. We're calling it UI elements. And there's a couple of examples here. Let's see, that's your left. So top left, you'll see basically some snippets of UXML, which is our kind of version, if you like, of CSS and C# and how it all comes together to basically produce a little editor window, which you see there. So it's a really rapid way to create UI. On the top right, it's basically our new UI elements debugger. So, it allows you to go in and check out the hierarchy and basically kind of inspect the properties. And then with regard to properties, we've got a whole, UI element, of course, supports property fields for both Windows and custom inspectors. And then on the right, the really cool thing is, this is, of course, you can use this to create super complex UIs. In fact, this is what's driving all of our new graph view and all of our new visual shader editor and shader graph and our VFX editor. Other cool things coming. I think the key point on this one is support for runtime. That's going to be really interesting. So, of course, we want to, UGUI's been out for a long time too. We want one way of writing UIs in Unity. So you get really all of this power and then the ability to run it on any of our target platforms as well. And that's going to be a super big change. And again, things like a lot of the editor is already running on ARM GUI, but or UI elements as it's now called. So I encourage you guys to get in there and check it out. New input system, I mentioned this earlier. So again, really cool system for working really intuitively with your input. So supporting things like action maps, combos. This is going to be provided as a package. So again, just get in there, check it out, and give us all the feedback in the forums. And this is one I want to really raise some visibility on. So how many people are working with asset bundles in the room? Yep, good few of you. So you've had to learn that learning curve, that rather steep learning curve of working with asset bundles and getting them really efficient. We've recognized that, and we now have a new system called Addressables. This is a really powerful way to basically just simply load an asset using a single address. And it doesn't matter whether that's on your, from our perspective, we want to make it as easy as if it's on your phone, if it's in the cloud, single address will load it. So that's a really powerful concept, and it really simplifies the process of working with asset bundles. And the other key thing in here is it lets you do what's called sort of this fast iteration mode, where instead of packing all the asset bundles when you do a build, we just have essentially a flat hierarchy of assets, and it lets you basically do one asset changes and then preview again on device, and it really improves that iteration time. So really recommend you guys get in there and check out Addressables. Right, animators, what's it all about? So, of course, we've had Mechanim and animation support in Unity for a long time, for about 5 or 6 years. And you're going to see in 19 a whole new suite of animation tools coming forward, which is really exciting. And this is, of course, driven by gaming, but also driven by film and all the needs that are coming from CG animation. So in the short term, though, we've actually got rid of all the runtime allocations in the animator system, so you're going to see a really nice performance bump there. Root motion refactor, if anyone's struggled with all of the various idiosyncrasies of our root motion, you'll be very happy in 2018.3. Two big things here. Well, the first one, runtime rigging. So rigging is a really interesting discipline because it basically brings together graphics, obviously animation, and it's really this sort of intersection of like three arts and the technical art of setting this up. And we have a roadmap against runtime rigging that, like, our vision is you should be able to do mocap with your phone, right? So support or maybe you've got a Vicon system if you're in a big studio, but somewhere in that spectrum, bring that mocap directly into Unity, and then basically preview and then do fix-ups in Unity, and potentially round trip to Maya. So we're really investing a lot in this ability to do a full workflow for animation, which is really cool. Some other, we talk a little bit we call ourselves an R&D department, and sometimes we don't do enough R. We do a lot of D. So this is a good example of actual real research. So Kinematic Ax, coming in the end of next year, is a machine-learned way of essentially synthesizing frames. So it's a procedural animation system. If you've played any of some of the Ubisoft games, some of the FIFA games, you'll have touched a little bit on this. It's also known as motion matching, and it's basically a way to this was a single mocap session that we did with the guy running around doing a number of moves, and then using the controller, basically you can seamlessly move around the environment, and it's basically it's synthesizing frames from this data set, which is really impressive. So it's going to take a little bit of time to really optimize that and get it out in your hands, but you should see a preview of that in the middle of the year. And actually, I would also want to mention the C# animation system. So imagine the ability anywhere in your blend tree just to drop in an IK node or a ragdoll, bit of ragdoll influence. So C#, this sort of new C# animation system essentially lets you customize your kind of end-to-end animation pipeline, if you like, with things like IK. And we're going to be adding a bunch of really interesting pieces of IK in there, like full body and whatnot. Okay, 2D. I'm going to skip this one because Russ is our 2D guru here, and he'll be coming back to talk a bit about this. But
awesome.
2D animation is also getting a big upgrade again at the end of this year and into next. Timeline, again, something I really want to raise visibility on. How many people in the room use Timeline? Brilliant, so I don't need to do that. Clearly a good few of you know about it, but this is a really key system for obviously, creating cinematic sequences and bringing things together. We've been doing a huge amount of, just hammering on the quality and the UX of the system, and you'll have seen some of those changes land in. Events and markers, that was a long requested feature, so really great to see that. Adding in good support for audio, some really nice audio improvements. We're adding in the ability to do nested timelines as well, which I don't know if it's listed up there, but I talked a bit about that this morning.
Yep.
And of course, being able to really customize the tracks and add in kind of like your own, support for your own nodes and so on. Video, we're going to be deprecating our old, what do we call it, the movie texture in support of our new video component. The new video component's awesome, does full, hardware accelerated video, and the support for H.265 coming in 2019.1. So that's really like a leading system now inside of Unity. We've really jumped up, and of course has great support for doing 180 and 360 video as well for VR, I should say. One notable thing here is we're going to be supporting Genlock next year. So for anyone who's working in kind of the broadcast space or needing to basically composite, Unity with a live video stream, that's going to be great news for you as well. Awesome. Am I back to you now? I think I am.
Yes.
Take it away.
Awesome. Okay, let's talk about artists and designers, right? So how many artists again in the room? Can I get a proud show of hands? Artists. There we go. Fantastic. And designers. Okay. So we've got a lot to cover, right? There's so many cool things happening. But let's start at the goal, right? Let's start at the mission. We want you to be able to bring your artistic vision to life in Unity, right? That means what you can see in your head, we want to make sure that that can become a reality in your experiences, in your games, in your applications, in the worlds that you're inviting your users into. So let's start with rendering, right? So scriptable render pipeline, 2019.1. It's a good time to start writing your own custom render pipeline because we're going to bring our core architecture out of preview. Now, this is great, but of course you can continue to use our lightweight and high definition render pipelines as well, and more on that as we go. So in 2018.3, we're bringing more flexibility to lightweight. So we've been working on kind of the stability as well, so that's going to come out in 2019.1. It's going to leave preview. And then let's talk a little bit about documentation. So in 2018.3, we've added documentation for our shaders, all the lit and simple lit and unlit, and we've been adding those to our GitHub repo so that you can get access to those as quickly as possible. But in 19.1, we're going to work towards doc coverage that is complete over all of lightweight. So that's going to be a lot more pleasant to work with. No more mysteries, right? We're continuing to push high-end quality in HD, of course. Things like screen space reflections and even more beautiful shadows, better contact shadows as well, to add a greater sense of weight, right? So all of the changes that we're seeing here, all of the features here in 2018.3, let's call out a few. I've already called out screen space reflections, so that's really cool. Planar reflections as well, and support for visual effect graph. Right? So all of this together really makes this a very strong, very robust solution for AEC, right? If you're trying to get that really cool rendering, you want to make things look realistic. Okay, so with HD, we're also focused on bringing stunning visual quality. I mean, you've seen some of the stuff that's been produced. It's looking really amazing. Some of the key improvements here that are definitely worth talking about are the stack lit shader here that allows for kind of layering of materials. So if you want to use multiple materials together and you want to be able to layer them, it makes it easier for you to create those realistic environments, right? Because that's really a lot more natural, right? To see these different effects together. And a big one for all of you VR users out there, support for VR, right? So you can use the high def render pipeline with VR. That's for 2019.1. Cool. Shader graph HD support was introduced in 2018.2. But in .3, you can now access all of the features of HDRP, and this is going to leave preview in 2019.1. Cool. Lighting. So configurable lighting fall-off gives you more control over your lights. We can see here we've got different types of fall-off. We've got the legacy linear, inverse squared fall-off with some range attenuation. So anyone who's ever wanted to create lights that are a bit more compatible with what we've seen in other solutions, we're seeing more of that here. So that's really cool. In 19.1, we're also making improvements to the light probe workflows, right? So you can do like de-ringing and visualization, just overall improving the quality of your light probes, right? And the workflow behind that. In 19.1, we're also giving a lot of attention to the progressive light mapper. We want to make sure that you have more control over your light map packing, right? So spatially coherent packing, and also the ability to set the maximum number of light maps. And the GPU light mapper as well. So in 18.3, we're going to get GPU acceleration windows, right? So this is for 18.3. And in 19.1, we're going to be adding support for Mac OS and Linux as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mac maybe delayed a little bit.
Okay. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about kind of the DCC step, right? The digital content creation. So Unity is where your project really comes together. right? And it's essential that Unity and your DCC tool just talk to each other really well, right? We've seen some interesting announcements, I think, that we were talking about earlier in the week. And when it comes to these workflows between Unity and other DCC tools, we're really trying to make sure that this relationship, is flexible and powerful, right? So our DCC roadmap, and there's a lot of stuff going on in it. We can't cover everything here, but let's highlight a couple of important points, right? So throughout the 2019 release cycle, we're making improvements to our different DCC importers. So you're going to see improvements to model and texture importer, the SketchUp importer. We're even planning to give you proper axis conversion. How about that? That's a pretty cool thing to see. Also in the 19 release cycle, we're going to provide an alternative to the existing import system with scripted import pipelines. So this is actually really powerful because the goal here is to give you more control over those DCC pipelines and how they come in, right? And how they get imported into Unity. What did I do? Okay, let's move forward. Text Mesh Pro gets a nice bump there in hybrid dynamic SDF fonts. So you can see here an example of that in action. Also in 2019.3, support for ligatures. Now in 2019.1, we're going to see some improvements to post-processing, specifically depth of field, motion blur, and auto exposure, and all of this within the HD render pipeline. Okay, this one's really cool. If you've seen some of the visual demos for this, it's something to get excited about. The visual effects graph will be released in preview during 2018.3. And this is really like it's a next-gen visual effects system or a visual effects system for next-gen platforms, right? So in a lot of these demos, you're not seeing thousands or tens of thousands or 100,000 particles. You're seeing millions, right? And with 19.1, we're going to be adding ribbon trails as well. So very exciting stuff. And of course, visual scripting.
We managed to get that.
So this has a clear and compact UI. You can see it here with blackboards and stacks. And what's really cool about this is these high-level nodes, they're extensible, right? So you can create these really high-level nodes, and then you can share those within your teams, within your projects. Also, it generates this really performant C# at runtime. So programmers are happy as well, right? Because there's easy debugging and optimization. So it's a real win-win here for your team. Also, with 2018.3, the much anticipated nested prefabs. So this includes support, of course, for prefab mode and prefab variants. Terrain, also getting an update with improved editor UX and support for seamless cross-tile painting, larger and faster brushes. You can even create your own custom brushes, which is something I've always wanted to do. It's GPU accelerated overall for a better editing experience. It's also more scriptable and customizable. And the terrain is now highly performant with the GPU height map. And as you can see, if we look at this diagram here, almost everything is running in the GPU, apart from the quad tree, almost everything is running in the GPU. So you get all of these performance bumps. And support for terrain holes. That's something I've always wanted. Okay, 2D. Get a show of hands. How many 2D developers in the room? Okay, nice. So in the world of 2D, we're adding support for isometric tiles in 2018.3. This is probably the most common usage of tile map systems in today's strategy games. And the 2D animation system that we saw briefly earlier moves into phase 2. So here we've added support for multi-sprite workflows, and we've tightened up that sprite rigging iteration. So you're doing everything in a single unified sprite editor window module. In 2019.1, we're adding improved collider generation to sprite shape. So this is, again, it's a better editor and runtime experience. It's gonna run a lot faster. And in 2019.2, we're going to get a preview of 2D lights. So this is going to help you bring mood and variation to your 2D games. Cool. Andrew?
Cool, awesome. I realize we're keeping you guys from your lovely reception next door. So I'll pick up the pace here a little bit. To close out the artist and designer section, we've got Cinemachine, which is our procedural camera system. Again, really well worth checking out if you haven't already. So a couple of key things here I want to note, the lens packs in particular. So a lot of requests for, hey, I've got like, I really like these Leica lenses or these Rotoflex lenses. So we were actually adding in specific kind of customized presets, like what the field of view and all their settings. Really quite technical. If you're a camera person, you'll know about things like focus breathing, which are kind of ways to sort of how the camera adjusts as you're doing focus pulls and so on. Lots of other nice things. So this is what we're showing here is this camera shake. So the ability to sort of trigger visual effects essentially inside the camera system based on events in your games. This was just a simple demo we knocked together. You can see what's going on from afar, and then of course the camera's getting these lovely little shakes. The last point is really interesting as well. So of course probably a lot of people in here watch PUBG streams and other streams online. How many times have you been watching a game stream and you just gone, oh, the camera, like, because it's really hard to like basically place nice cameras in a battle royale type of game. So the thing about Cinemachine is that it's basically an intelligent camera system. It can kind of figure out what's going on in the scene. So we're developing a system called Cinecast, which sits on top of Cinemachine and basically places up to 800 cameras in your scene. And selectively, based on what's going on in the action, it gives the streamer an opportunity to basically direct the action in a game in a stream, which is really powerful. Check it out. Go to unity.com/Cinecast. We didn't have time to fit it in today. We'd love you guys to go and take a look and provide us with some feedback on that. And of course, finally, it's finishing the full integration into the post-processing stack. Okay, world building. So we talked a bit about ProBuilder this week, and it's getting full integration into Unity, so consistent UI across the board. It no longer, that was an acquisition we did. The guys joined our team. Doesn't look like an asset store package. It's fully integrated now, and we're bringing their polybrush tech in as well, which lets you set up all the various brushes for world building and so on. 19.1 sees us take on the kind of integration into our hierarchy window, and basically do things like layering and sort of scene visibility, grouping, and so on. So really, really nice workflow updates there. They also are bringing their ProGrid technology in, so grids and snapping. Again, some really long outstanding workflow improvements there for artists, so you'll be hopefully happy to see that. Some really nice ways to quickly, when you're world building, you just want to like really rapidly move stuff around and snap it together and so on. By the end of the year then, we'll be kind of moving more towards, we talk about being content first in how we want to work with Unity. So really being able to just be really focused and kind of get into a flow inside the editor. So providing like context menus directly there on the assets that you're editing and so on. Being able to like do universal search, so kind of spotlight style search for things in the editor as well. Some really cool stuff. Audio, you would have seen us demo this new C#, sort of the underlying framework for a new C# audio system when we demoed Megacity. That's coming out, and it's basically going to be fully ECS driven, so highly performant, allows us to do like really complex audio scenes very simply. And this new UNode API, which is a way for us to basically sort of think about like how our DSP graphs and how these things actually all plug together. So UNode, I'd expect to see some of that by mid to next year, and it'll be basically built on top of the same kind of flow graph stuff that we've shown you for the shader graph and so on. So, summary, what are we up to? Well, basically, we're giving you a flexible and modern editor and a feature set. That's the first thing, right? You spend all your time in there. That's got to be really nice. We've shown you things for programmers, things for artists, things for animators, things for all of your production team. So it's really trying to make sure that like we invest a huge amount in technology and innovation just to keep everybody basically productive. We want to get into this package workflow where we're sharing packages with you in previews in an early way, and basically have that really tight iteration loop. Of course, filling in the gaps, like we recognize, is not all about shiny features. It's just fixing some of the things that we've heard from you for a long time. I mean, nested prefabs was probably one of the classic ones that we filled a gap with this year. And of course, evolving legacy systems. So things like our terrain system, things like our audio system, really just bringing them forward into you know, what the most modern systems, what you'd expect from the most modern systems. And of course, we just basically want to give you more opportunities, be able to deploy to, you know, the next billion Messenger users out there, and really grow the opportunities for your studio. And I think that is just about it for us, and we may be a little bit tight for time, so I will say again, please visit, you know, I'll maybe give Russ an hour or two to post up some links, but keep an eye on his Twitter feed, and we'll share this deck. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to, of course, thank everybody for coming to Unite India. I mean, it's been really amazing, so just a round of applause to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to also really thank our crew who've been supporting everybody this week. So really awesome job. Thank you, everybody. And of course, really like to thank our sponsors and all of our partners for helping us here. And of course, our Unite India crew, wherever you are, if you're out there somewhere, Shruti and Arvind and everyone. So again, thank you, and please, we'll be around, so please come and grab us for some questions. I don't think we'll do a big Q&A. I think let's just head next door, and look forward to seeing you there. Thank you.
Thank you very much.